Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Rafael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Rafael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Leslie, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm great. I'm so excited to be here. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm exceptional. Every day trying to get a little bit better, you know?
Yeah. That's the only way to do it.
That's the only way to do it. For those of us who have a growth mindset, that's the only way, right?
Yeah.
So it's early for you. Thank you so much for being here.
I do get up very early. I wake up at like around 5-ish and I do a cold plunge. I walk my dog. I do my Pilates workout. I do some red light, do some meditation, but I give myself usually 3 hours. So this morning I got up a little earlier so that I could do most of that before this call.
Well, one of my goals is I'm trying to set everything up in New York, but I want to move to, I don't know necessarily Las Vegas, but definitely near. How's that?
Yeah. I mean, Las Vegas is beautiful. A lot of people don't realize there's more to it than the Strip, and we're 2 hours from so many national parks and state parks, and so if you like the outdoors, you're in a good place. Plus, it's 4 hours from out to LA, so you can get your California life
Yeah,
on if you want.
exactly. I have a lot of friends of mine who want me to move to California. I said no. Arizona would be it for me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Arizona is beautiful, but it depends on like there's certain places I'd live. Like I'd live in Sedona. I'd live near the Segura National Park in Tucson. So like I think it'd be beautiful to wake up every day surrounded by saguaros.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be cool. So I want to get to know Leslie, but first I want to get to know where you were born.
Okay.
And before the age of 10, what was life like? Who influenced you? What was going on in your life then?
I was born in Stockton, California, but I grew up in Lodi, so just the next town over.
Mm,
Um, Before the age of 10, I'll just say life was actually quite difficult. My parents didn't have a lot of money. Um, there was a lot of just, there's issues when there's only one income and only one ability to have income and a fixed income. And I think people can recognize like it doesn't matter how much love is around. If like things are really tough, it can weigh year after year on
mm,
parents and life. And so I was a big dreamer and I probably got lost in my own mind and I got lost in books. I read a lot of books.
nice.
Um, my mom wanted me to be a dancer, but I'm not very good. So my dad had me in sports. My grandfather was a professional baseball player.
Mm,
If my dad didn't have to go to war, he probably would have been in sports of some kind. So, and he was really adamant that like the only way out of this town is if you get a college scholarship because we can't afford college and you have to have a college education. And so he was really trying to prepare me at a very young age. I think I was in little league as early as you could be. Um, so I think like, I think a lot of people will have fond memories of when they were a kid. And I think of like, that was a really hard time
mm,
for someone, like I look at her and go, she had to be really strong and very vigilant and really aware. And, I think it's tiring for a little kid.
yeah, it could be. It could be for sure. Who, and I love the fact that your dad was thinking ahead for your
Mhm.
life, your future. Um, Besides your dad, who would you say influenced you around that time that you can recall?
Um, I that I can recall, I had a babysitter who was really fun.
Mm,
And she kept things like extremely exciting. And then I had a grandma who was very young. So when I was born, she was 36. So she was a very young grandma.
mm,
Um, and maybe almost 37. And so she loved arts and crafts and she loved going to plays, and she loved going to museums. And so while my parents couldn't really do that with us, my grandparents would take us to a lot of those things. And I think that was just really fun to do, just really
Mhm.
fun to enjoy.
Mhm. Right. Hey, Michael Duffy, thanks for joining us, buddy. When you look back at that and you talked about how hard it was, right, with your parents, but your dad was a dreamer. And one of the things that you said, and actually I did a show earlier today about the theater of the mind,
Hmm.
and you went there.
Yeah.
And what were the things that you would have in your thoughts and your ideas? What did that look like for you back then?
Back when I was 10, I don't really remember. To be honest, I would be guessing, but I mean, I read 500. My mom read me 500 books when I was in kindergarten. So like in first grade, as soon as I could read my own books,
Wow.
the library, here's the thing, if you don't have money, like there is a library, and we would check out
Mhm,
as many books as we were allowed to check out every single week. We were there every single Wednesday,
mhm.
and I would just get lost in books. And I think like that's where my mind would just wander, is with the characters and the books I would read.
Wow, Leslie, I got to tell you, that was a mic drop for anybody who is right now putting their kids, instead of giving them a book, they're giving
Yeah.
them a tablet. They're
Yeah.
giving them the wrong things.
I think it actually is really sad to me. And look, I don't have kids, so I don't know what it's like to be worn down from a long work day and then also have multiple children needing attention. Like I don't, that I can't attest to, but I also do know that um, when I see young kids today, we just did trick or treating,
Mm,
and most of the kids couldn't look us in the eye. To
really?
like f it
Wow.
just and I just found that very interesting. It was like an observation. Um, we were doing a fun little game. We live in Vegas, so of course the person like built a craps table with like candy, and it's like, "Okay, place your bets." And it was just fun to watch the observation of different age groups, right?
Mhm,
And the young kids had no idea what this was going on, so they just like rolled the dice, right? And he was like, "Okay, it's what's 5 and 5." And it was interesting to watch with different learning styles and also different ages, like who could just do the simple math.
mm,
And I was actually impressed with some of the younger kids. Some of the older kids like still couldn't do it. And I was like,
mm,
what is going on? Are we letting people spend too much time? Because when you read, even though that's not math, there is math in the reading. There's 5 people, there's this. And so I think it's really sad that reading is losing that.
mm,
I think at a dinner table, if they could, I was allowed to read a book at a dinner table. So if I didn't want to participate in the conversation, I could totally read a book.
right.
And I think like that is probably a better option because I don't know. Maybe I mean, I'm not a child psychologist, but I just wonder, like, are kids learning how adults interact if they're not interacting? And like I was at the dinner table, and if I put my book down, I could see I could do it, So I don't know. I
Mm.
feel like it's really hard as an adult to put my phone down. Like once your phone's on, like I have to have it turned over all the time because if something
Right.
pops up, it's distracting. So I do think it's really sad to me, but you know, I'm also not a parent, so I'm just gonna be an observer.
Well, it's a great observation. I have a client, and when I was talking to the client's kids, they were upset, and I was trying to figure out why. And they said, we got in trouble, and my parents took away my books. It was two girls, but their parents never allowed them to watch TV. So the only way they can be entertained was with their books. And when they didn't behave well, the parents would take away the books, and they would scream and cry. And nowadays, when you gotta hit the kid with the book and say, "Read this," right?
Right,
So
right.
it's so different.
Yeah. And I think um it also just depends like my on who if your parent was a reader maybe, like My husband loves to read fantasy books. And so he, when it comes to Christmas time, like we buy books for our nieces and nephews, we buy tons of books for them. And I was a reader too. So, when I ask like, oh, what books do they already have? They're like this, they're like, they have the books you bought them. And I'm like, oh, okay, we have to buy more books then. You got to get more. So I think it depends on the person who is raising them, like what their attachment to books are. So I think as adults, we could all do a really good job really getting to know ourselves and knowing like what we can do that's outside of our phone, what's like not outsourcing ourselves to devices and algorithms. And then how can we teach that to people around us? Because actions are caught, not taught, right? Like, so like you can tell kids, don't be on your phone. But if they always see you on yours, it's kind of they don't the brain doesn't like dissonance. So of course they're gonna get upset.
Yeah. It's the parents that say, "Do what I tell you, not what I do."
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's a tip for you. This past weekend, I had a buddy of mine turn me on to a device so I can know what books I have because I have so many, and so does he.
Oh,
It's called Book Buddy. And the
cool.
cool thing about Book Buddy is that not only you can scan, at the back of a book, it has this barcode. You can
Yeah.
scan it, and I have so many books, and you can scan it, and you can put if you've read it, if you're in the middle of it, even if you loaned it out, and to whom. Isn't
Oh,
that a
this
cool
is a
app?
really cool app. I really
Yeah.
like this because I literally somebody gave me a book and I was like, this looks so familiar. And so we got home and I had two already. And I was like, well, that's why it looks familiar. Like, I clearly haven't read it yet. And it's been gifted and I bought it.
Yeah. But it also lets you know if you're somewhere and you go, "Oh, I like that book," and you look at your app really quick, "Oh, wait, I'm gonna have it." Right?
Yeah.
Or maybe I
Yeah.
read it once or
And
it's a
also, people ask me all the time, like, what are your favorite books? Like, what's your favorite self-help book? What's your favorite this book? And I'm like, I end up saying the same 2 all the time because that's the ones I can remember first.
you can also heart them so you know which ones are your favorite, right?
Oh, I love this.
It's
Thank
called
you.
Book Buddy. So I know listen, when somebody gives me a tip, I gotta share it with somebody else.
I
So
love this tip. Thank you so much.
I wanna get back to you because, you're very fascinating and, the way we grow up sometimes can tell a story. And I love the fact that you kind of had this idea, even though you don't recall exactly what you were having in the theater of your mind, but you still had that idea of, because of your reading, probably you had adventures, right? You can read somebody's adventure. Moving on past 10 years old, let's get into how you got to where you are. When was the first time in your life that you found, I'm going to say it, Pilates, right? But maybe even before Pilates, what was there something that drove you in that direction?
Yeah, so I've been an athlete all the way through high school, and I was good enough to get some scholarships, but I didn't think the scholarships amounted to as much efforting as I would have to do. So I was like, I don't love my sport as much as like, when I did the math, I was like, I still am going to have to get a student loan, and I can make more money working a job.
Mm,
So I decided to retire from running in college, but I loved working out. I loved going to the gym. I loved the way that felt. So I was still going to the gym. Someone had convinced me to like take a trainer test, and I did that, but I didn't really. I was like, I don't really see myself doing this as a part-time gig. It's not really my thing. And what had happened is I was looking for something because all of my friends from college had moved away, so they all got married, moved away. So here I was, not in a new town. I'd been there for 4 years, but starting over because all of my college friends had moved away. So this girl invited me to a Pilates class, and I actually thought it was going to be a BS workout. I thought you can't do it's an infomercial workout. Like, what is it going to do for me? But there was this like thing inside me that's like, you need a friend, and someone invited you to something, so maybe you should go do that. So I went to the class, just fully expecting to just go one time
right,
and never go again, and just hopefully get to hang out with this girl doing other things. And, what ended up happening is in the first exercise, I felt parts of my body I never felt before.
Mm.
And as a person who's always, like, in her head a lot, like a big dreamer, if you knew astrology, I'm an Aquarius, so very much in their head. And also I'm a hypermobile body. So, like, I don't I didn't always feel what it was like to be in the muscles of my body, because
Mm.
it was really easy for me to look like I was doing things at the gym or in sports, but not necessarily actually using all of the muscles. And so I felt parts of my body I never felt before. And I thought that was so interesting because, like, I'd studied biomechanics, I'd studied biology, I'd studied anatomy, and I was like, I know all of them. Like, I'm feeling new things. And so I felt so good when I left, because, and I couldn't articulate it then, but I can looking back, was that I
Mm.
felt what it was like to be in my body and to be present in my body, not off like in la la land, like in present in my body, present in the moment, not thinking about other things were going on, not worrying about other stuff. And so when I left that class, I found a place that had classes at a few different locations so I could go every single day. And I changed everyone's schedule at my work. I manage a jewelry store, and I changed it so I can go to class every single day. And I did that for over almost 2 years, like a year and a half.
Mm.
And the more I did it, the more I would have like these wonders, like I was leaving a class and I was like, I actually don't like living here. And I was like, where did
Mm.
that thought come from? Like where did that pop up?
Right,
So
right.
I just by practicing being in my body, I allowed like thoughts that I had to actually articulate themselves, like to actually be brought to the forefront. I was like, oh, I'm living
Mm.
here. And I was like, wow, that's a weird thought. Like, where would I live? And I went to work that day, and a girl at another store in the company I worked for, she called me. She said, hey, I just want you to know I put my 2-week notice in. And she had the same job as me at a different location. It was in Santa
Mm.
Monica, California. And I was like, I'm going to put in a transfer for your job. Is that okay? And she said, what? You want to move here? I'm like, I think I do. I think I want to
Mm.
move here. And so what was so cool is the more I did Pilates, the more I was seeing opportunities in front of
Right.
me to change my life and to do different things. And so as I did, so I moved to Los Angeles, and within a few months of living there, a Pilates teacher there was like, you should teach this. And I never had ever thought I would teach it.
Mm.
Like, I don't even know, it really, until she said that, never occurred to me that I could like change my career or change my path. Like, I had $80,000 in student loans. Like,
Right.
I actually loved the job that I had. It was such a fun job. And so I just like, I kind of, just it didn't occur to me that I could like change my path. But I'm so glad that she did that, because it actually is what led me to being where I am today. Like, if
Mm.
I hadn't had those little invitations and
Mm.
been present enough to notice them, I we wouldn't be talking.
Yeah. Do you find that, let me ask you this question. With that friend, is she still doing Pilates today?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I know she was doing Pilates a year after I moved, but I moved and she ran the store that I left. And then we lost touch because I actually ended up leaving the company. So I don't know, but I
Mm.
hope she is.
Right.
I hope she still enjoys it.
It's interesting, and, one of my master instructors that, came to me almost 26, 27 years ago, they entered my place because they were brought in by a different person, and the other person just wanted to try a class. And this master, who she's now a master instructor with us, she fell in love just like you did.
Yeah.
And she stuck it out, and her friend didn't.
Yeah.
That's why I asked that question, right?
I think it happens more off a lot of times. Like, I think some people just get excited about things. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Cause like, also like the person I'm married to, I was introduced to by a mutual friend, and she was only in our lives for 1 summer. And I
Mm,
think that sometimes people are just around to be guides,
right.
and like they don't even know what they're guiding someone to. They just are like, like they just have this urge to take you along, and then they keep going and you keep going. But like, those
Mm,
are important little moments. Those people, it's like they're if we're going back to books, like they're these like little characters. Some of these little characters, like, why are we spending so much time on this person?
mm,
Because they're there to set something up, you know?
yeah, yeah. Even if they're not the main character, but
Correct.
the supporting characters, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wh when you left that first class, I know you said you felt your body in a different way.
Mhm.
Did you feel a connection with your mind and body or just your body?
No, I think it's a mind body connection. I think that's why it felt so different.
Mm,
Like I love weight training. I think it's a great thing. We all know the science around what it does for your bones, all that stuff is super important. But it's really easy for you to do squats. And like I just did at the gym last night. We were doing 40 squats and we were
Mm.
talking
Yeah.
most of the time. Like you start to get tired and you start to like take pauses between sentences, but you can actually like entertain the idea, do we want to have dinner after this? Like, what are you doing?
Mm.
Like while you're doing it,
Right,
you could
right.
still have great form. You could still lift heavy weights. You might have like pauses in your breath, but like you can still do it all. When you are doing Pilates, and I imagine it's similar to the things that you do, you have to focus on what's moving from where. You have to turn off all
Mhm.
the other stuff and you have to be so present because if your mind wanders, you end up doing choreography. And when you do choreography, you either,
Mm.
at the very least, you get nothing out of it,
Right.
or worse, you could injure yourself because
Mm.
you're not fully connected.
Yeah, yeah. It's incredible when we have that mind-body connection and even moment connection, right? Because like you said, you can't be thinking about dinner when
Yeah.
you're in that moment, when you're
Yeah.
truly feeling that muscle, because it's interesting and I'm sure you've seen it where people are just going through the motions. Like you said, they're dancing, right? Just going through the motions and they go like, oh, I didn't get that much out of that class. Meanwhile, you see other people who are like, wow, that was incredible, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
When you were told, "Hey, you can do this, you can teach this class," what was that initial thought for you?
I was only a little nervous because I was like, I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know. And then also, like, to be honest, I had a great job and I made great commission, but also I lived in Los Angeles and I could barely afford all of that. So I was like, how am I going to pay for this training?
Mm,
And it was 2008 when I became a mat Pilates instructor.
mm,
And I did my comprehensive in 2009. So that's like 600 hours. And I had to break them up because I needed to save up money to do the next part. Cause I was like, I mean, back in 2008, nine, that was like $7,000. That was a lot to be a Pilates instructor. That
right,
was a
right.
lot of money.
Mhm.
That's a lot of money now,
Yeah.
so that was really like I didn't doubt that I could do it or I wouldn't have fun doing it. I actually was more concerned on the logistics of how it was going to happen, because I didn't want it to be something that took me years to do.
Mm, yeah, yeah, that's powerful. It's interesting, because that master instructor was a teacher,
Mhm.
and for the longest time, I'm like, "Oh, you're so good, you should become an instructor." Wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. She didn't have the confidence that she could do it. And
Yeah.
then many years later, I had other instructors come in, and then one day she understood that I had somebody who left.
Mhm.
And so I had to take over those classes. And she said, I understand that you're looking for somebody. I was like, yeah, you know anybody? She goes, me? I'm like, no, really? And so finally she saw an opportunity, and I had stopped asking
Yeah.
because I'd asked for so long. I said, you know what? You can't, you can take the horse to water, as the saying goes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you also the thing is like everyone is like for me the logistics were like the concerning part, but sometimes I think when I've met people I'm like you should teach this. They either compare themselves to where you are,
Mhm.
the person
Right.
that's suggesting it, and they're like, I can never be like you. And it's like, well, you will be better than me. But like, I've been doing this for 15 years. Like, it's going to take you some time. But the other thing I think sometimes people don't want to take someone's spot. Like, they
Mm,
feel like, who am I to take that spot? And I
mm,
think, like, I am not this way now, but way back then, if that girl hadn't put a 2-week notice in, I'm not really sure what I would have done because I would have been uncomfortable if I told our bosses I wanted to transfer and they made someone move out of a
mm.
spot for
Right,
me. So I
right.
think sometimes some people are afraid that like if I do this, then I might take someone else's spot and I want to do that. So I really think it's like confidence level. You mentioned that is really important and where you are in your journey of like taking up the space you legitimately are allowed to do and you've deserved and you've worked for and you've earned. I
Mm.
think sometimes it just takes us some time to see ourselves in those positions.
I love how you said because you started to connect with your body in a way that you had never connected, even though you were an athlete. And it was a lot deeper than you probably even expected.
Mhm.
That opportunities started showing up for you, like that job opportunity. Do you think that would have shown up even if you didn't do Pilates?
I don't think I do know that spot would have opened up. Do I know that I would have asked for it?
Mm,
I don't think so, and I also don't think that they would have given it to me. It was the opportunity was a much smaller job, actually. It's the same role, but it was a smaller store, and I was
mm.
their number 1 salesperson. So the reason they let me have it is because they didn't wanna lose me. They thought if they didn't give it to me, they'd lose me. So I do I what I think would have happened is I probably would have ended up in Las Vegas in 2008. And then I would have lost my job 2 years later, so, like, I I think, um, I think, like, my life would be so different in so many ways because the
Mm,
friendships that I made because of being a Pilates instructor and because of being the type of Pilates instructor I was and the way I like to teach is the reason why I met the person who connected me to the person who connected me to my husband. So,
mm,
like, just all those things, like, we would never have met,
right.
and so, and I don't even know, like, it would just be so different. So it's just so funny. I really do think that, like, I was so meant, like, I can't think of anything else I would be
Mm,
meant to do. Now, I do know that I'm completely qualified to do a ton of things, and I have
right.
so many dreams outside of this for when those times come. But, like, I do think that I was absolutely meant to go on this journey because it gave me so much confidence in who I am and what I'm capable of, what my body can do. Like it's how to observe people's bodies. Like, it's
Mhm.
just really quite the gift and journey that I've been on that also allowed me to go, I could probably do anything that I want to do after this.
Mm, love it, love it. When you and you just said something that's important for me as well. I was training somebody this morning, and it was a new client, and they just wanted to see if I was any good. And I'm like, bring it, right? And afterwards they were like, here, take my credit card. Let's keep going. One of the things that I told them is that I'm going to be looking at your body, so don't be offended, right? And a young lady, and I said, the reason I'm going to be looking at you, it's because I'm looking at your alignment. Because your body's going to tell me a story. It's going to tell me how to train you, what to fix, and all these different things. And I know that Pilates is going to do that. When you are out in public, I know you're doing that.
I stopped a long time ago.
Tell me
Here's
why.
why. If you're not paying me to look at you and
Right.
give you an opinion, I have too many other things on my mind. My
Mm,
husband does. He's like, "Look at this person. Look at how their foot turns in." I'm like, "Yeah, they have a weakness in that hip, and
right.
I bet you they've got a problem up in that shoulder. And if you look at how their head's tilting, like that's when I'll look, is like I'm addressing like he's seeing something in people,
Right.
and I think that's really cool. But for me, um, to be honest, the poor posture in society is really concerning.
Ooh,
Um, and I more concerning than people not reading, like
mm,
more concerning. And
mm,
here's why. So, and you probably have seen this too. Um, Poor posture causes poor digestion. We actually know there is science that shows that the gut is really key to a lot of things going on in your body, including your hormone health.
mm,
So if we're looking at people with poor digestion, means they're not doing a great job of like getting toxins out of their body. They're not releasing things correctly. Then we see they have stagnation in their body. Then we also see that they have poor hormone health. We wonder why people are struggling with fertility on both sides, right? Like
mm,
what's going on? We wonder why people are struggling with depression and other elements when they had joy before. The more your head comes forward of your body, the more you see things coming at you as an attack and not help.
mm.
And so I was just at the airport and I was like, could not believe how some people don't even look like they have heads anymore. They're just bodies, right? They're just
Right.
rounded
Yep.
shoulders and their head is so I can't even do it. It stretches my neck so much. Like I can't
Mhm.
even do it. And I'm just like, and then I watch those same people get irritated but with the flight attendants, and I watch those same people like get get pushy or frustrated or just like, or they don't even like, they're not even there. Like they're
Mm.
just like shells. And I just worry about the health consequences of poor posture. Also, we didn't even get into back pain and
Oh.
the costs of back pain. And
Mm.
back pain is uh, costly in how much it costs you to take care of it, massages, chiropractors, physical therapy, but also the parts of life you miss out on.
Mm.
And when you start to avoid stairs because it hurts your back, and
Yeah.
then it gets harder and harder to get up and down from a chair. I think we're
Mm.
going to see, like, we are seeing that people are not living nearly as long as like the trajectory. In other countries they are, but like in this one, you know, in other places, I think that poor posture is, so I actually have a hard time looking at it. And I really try not to, because unless you are asking me for my help, you don't want it. You know what I mean? I do
You're
think that
correct.
people have to be ready
Mhm.
for just like I was like, I don't want to do Pilates, like, you know, but I went with an open mind, and I had some fun. But I do think that like forcing people to do things that they're not willing to do doesn't actually help them either, you know. So I wish we could figure out a way to help people understand that the importance of poor posture, like the importance of their posture. But I think like so many people were told to pull their shoulders back from their mom, so they're to get irritated, and this is like the rebellion.
Exactly. Do you know how many people listening to us right now just they sat up in their chair, they went, "Oh, I got to get my posture." But you're so 100% right, maybe 1,000% right, because they said evolution, right? We came from monkeys, and we were our heads were down, and all of a sudden we started to stand up. But guess
Mhm.
what? We're going back,
We are.
right?
We're 100% going back, and it is affecting that lizard brain that we have, that brain that's always seeking for something negative. It's seeking even more, and you're actually
Mhm.
seeing like you're misinterpreting help. You know, like I think about in the old movies, if somebody bumped somebody on the street, they would go, "Oh, good morning. Oh, hi."
Right.
Right? And now if someone bumps someone on the street in a movie, it's a F you, da da da, get like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I think that it has, I mean, there's so many factors in it, but also like we are not actually stand without that amazing, without strong posture, and I mean strong, you don't have all of your nerve endings aren't working the same way. Like the messages from the brain to the body are slower if they're happening at all. And so I just think that like it would be really great if instead of telling people like I want 10,000 steps for everybody, like I think everyone can move more, but also like can we actually, instead of giving more pills out for digestion, what if we actually look at like what is your core strength like? And I don't mean how many sit-ups can you do,
Right.
because that's not core strength. You know that core strength, and the way that Pilates thinks about core strength is it's the muscles around your axial skeleton. So from your tailbone to the crown of your head. So the muscles that surround all of that. Can you stabilize your spine and still move your arms and legs? If you can, that's a strong spine. And the reason why I started to really get obsessed with posture and Pilates is because I actually had poor posture. Like I was 5'9" in the 6th grade, and I was so embarrassed to be
Mm.
so tall. I was taller than all the boys. I was taller than
Mm.
everybody. And I really struggled. And then again, I mentioned as a hypermobile body. And so the more I did Pilates, the more my body actually stood up taller on its own. And so I don't actually really think about my posture unless I'm really tired. I'm like, ooh,
Right.
I'm not staying up as well as I normally am. But most times my body just does it for me. And that's what our bodies are supposed to do. We're supposed to train them so they can do their job. Your
Mm.
muscles are what holds your bones up. Right. But a lot of people are just letting their bones hold them up. And that's why we're seeing people get shorter. I love it. Someone's just checked their posture of their computer. Way to go, Tommy.
Yeah, yeah. Tommy Rosa, a good friend of mine. He's also a competitive guy, so he's very much an athlete as well.
Yeah.
And I also love that he said that, and everyone can take a note on posture awareness,
Yeah.
because think about that. If you walk by the mirror, in the old days, people used to check themselves.
Hmm.
Now they're looking at their phone. They don't have time to check themselves,
Yeah.
right? Unless,
Yeah.
of course, and I was at an event recently, and I saw somebody, of course, in front of the mirror, just checking themselves and then taking selfies. It was kind of funny. I was like, "Oh, that now you're really checking yourself,"
Yeah.
because they're trying to tell someone a story that's not 100% true, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we get a little obsessive about things that don't matter. And like going back to the basics is really important. I do think that um, when I grew up, there was a heavy emphasis on moving your body. And so like it wasn't abnormal for me as an adult to move my body. I do think that more and more people are not growing up with that importance. And so when they are thinking about parts of their body, they're not thinking about the movement. Our bodies were literally meant to push and pull. They were meant to, we could run and jump onto a rock, and then we could like, and this is for men and women. Like we could do all those things. In fact, like there's a really great book called Eve. It's the history, the evolution of the female mammalian body. And then you'll learn something about yourself in every chapter too. It's actually quite
Mm.
fascinating. And there's a whole chapter on legs. And like
Nice.
women, actually, the way our legs are built is actually for endurance. It is for endurance. And so it's really fascinating. You can learn about our bodies. And the reason why we're here today, yes, if you've read Sapiens, is because we tell stories. But the other reason we're here is because we have evolved to having all these different things that allow us to live this life. The way women hear, the way that our bodies are made, the way that men's bodies are made, all of this is so we can live a life. And so many of us are outsourcing that life to a device.
Mm.
uh, we are placing heavy emphasis on other people making our lives better versus us. And I think the more you get in touch with your body, the more connected you are to what would make your life better, who makes your life better. I have strong boundaries. It's not because I grew up with them. I was
Mm.
not raised to have strong boundaries. It's raised to be a people pleaser. I have strong boundaries because the more I get to know myself, the more I'm like, oh, I'm really tired today. So that lunch I'm supposed to do, maybe I'm going to push it because I'm actually not feeling awesome.
Mm.
And I'm not going to be a good person. I'm not going to be a good friend to that person. I'm not going to be a good colleague, whatever that is. So what if I can't push that? What can I push? Right? What can get taken off today's plate? Because I'm feeling tired today. Oh, I'm
Mm.
actually feeling really strong today. Oh, you need a helping hand? Yeah, I've got that because I know
Mhm.
myself, right? And so I
Mhm.
think the more we actually get to know ourselves, we go back to the basics of moving our body and getting connected to our center and like strengthening our posture, we become more aware of where we are on the energy spectrum. We're not going to wake up every day thinking it's roses and unicorns all day
Mm.
long. You might wake up that way and an hour later you're like, crap, I'm having a hard day. And then you have roses later. Like it's it's a an ever evolving thing, but knowing where you are allows you to find balance. Oh,
Mm.
I'm a little too far over here. I gotta what can I do to pull myself over here? And when you know your body, you know what you need. When you don't
Mm.
know your body, you don't know how to get back there. And so you end up kind of always on one end of the spectrum
Mm.
or swinging like major swings and not getting to, just kind of stay in that vibration you want.
Would you say that sometimes people allow their environment to also make them tired?
I think so. But I
Mm.
also think it's lazy. Like, I think that they don't change their environment,
That's true.
like I was at a hotel this last weekend and there was something wrong with the room. And I was a little upset about it because I was like, this is a really expensive room. I've
Mhm.
stayed here before. This is not supposed to happen. I'm going to call them. And my mom's like, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. And I was like, it's a big deal to me. It's actually like, this is not how the room is supposed to be.
Mm.
I know how the room is supposed to be. And we are allowed to want what we expected. And I don't get everything in life that I want, but in this room, I can get that. And so I'm going to fight for that. And she was willing to spend 4 days in a room that didn't have good Wi-Fi
Mm.
and didn't have the sheets they didn't actually switch the sheets out. Like I was like, no, that's not what we paid for. So because I think people are willing to just go, well, this is what it is. This is it's easier to just I don't want to stir things up. I don't want to make people mad. And it's actually just easier just to sit here in it and not worry
Mm.
about it. And I'm like, it might be. And there's other things that like someone might be going, well, why, who cares about the Wi-Fi? That might be different for you. But for me, you can change your environment. You can actually change the physical location of where you are.
Mm.
You can go like sometimes I love my house, but sometimes when like the work is feeling really hard or really stressful, I will go work somewhere else because I need to change the environment because I don't want
Mhm.
my home to be a stressful place. So I actually
Correct.
take myself somewhere else. It allows me to have a different perspective on the same problem, right? So I think you can. And then sometimes you actually just need to like maybe turn some music on. Maybe you turn the TV off. Maybe you change the temperature. Maybe
Yeah.
you paint the room. So I think there's lots of different ways to change environment, but I think a lot of people don't, and then their environment slowly changes them.
Oh yeah. I was at an event I was speaking at, and we had lunch with three other speakers, and we're sitting there, we're eating lunch, and they're good, and we're all going back to. They were staying at a different hotel. I said, "How's your hotel?" They're like, "Could you do me a favor? Can you come look?" I'm like, "You want me to come to your hotel and look?" Oh, sure, no problem. I go there, and they're like, "Look at the bed sheet." I'm like, "Okay," and I lift it, and there was like tiny little things on it, and then in their bathroom there was blood, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I said, "Why?" Well, this is all we can get. I said, "No." I said, "You cannot stay here. You're speaking tomorrow. You're gonna be miserable. You're gonna sleep here tonight. This is not
Mhm.
gonna be good for you for anything you're gonna do this
Yeah.
weekend."
Yeah.
So I said, "Let's go and talk to them at the hotel, and you're checking out."
Yeah.
I said, "I'm not. I know in my hotel, it's gonna be a little bit more than you wanted to pay. I'll pay the difference."
Yeah.
So I did them a favor. I said, "I will pay whatever difference it is. It doesn't matter. I'll make sure you get a nice room. You deserve more. And
Yeah.
okay, you can't afford it. That's fine.
And
I'll
you know
pay the
what's so
difference."
cool about that is like giving that person that opportunity to experience deserving more.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing though. I think some people have never experienced another environment to know that
Mhm.
there is another option,
Mhm.
or they think they're not worthy of it. Or, and like, so sometimes we do need someone to pull us into a different environment to go, oh, hold on, this feels really good.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh yeah, yeah. It's interesting because I always think environment does make it. And I love the way you said maybe change the color, change the temperature, change where you're in the even if you can't leave the room, but maybe you're sitting in the wrong spot. Maybe the sun is not shining on you. Maybe there's not a plant near you, so maybe bring a plant. All these different things, because it's how you feel that are going to allow you to be the best person you are. Right?
Mhm. Mhm.
When you started your training to become a Pilates instructor, you could have just stopped and become just a Pilates instructor. Why go further?
Oh, I think it's the same reason why I'll read the next book in a series. Like, you want to know
Mm,
what's more. Also, why would you reread a book? Because like you
mm,
learn more the second time
mm,
around, right? So in Pilates, there's a lot of different, it's an unregulated fitness regimen.
right.
So just so you know, when you're going to a Pilates class, you probably should find out if people were trained in a weekend or a few weekends, or if they did a 9 month or longer training. Um, there are a lot of different franchises that are Pilates inspired. So those are often trained in a weekend or two.
Mm,
They might have different levels. So they might have a few more weekends, but typically you're not doing like 600 hours of apprenticeship. That doesn't include the trainings hours. um, so I did that, and that was great. And it really set me up for success. And I was doing really well, but I had a lot of questions and I felt like I couldn't get answers from my first training. And I sought out other teachers who'd been teaching longer. And I was also trying to get closer to the source. Like Joseph Pilates has passed away, but
mm,
there were still people who were alive who trained with them. And some of them I didn't have access to, but I had access to people who trained with them. And you kind of can get access if you've trained with one of the proteges. And so I trained with some people who trained with one of Joseph Pilates' clients, and loved them. And they changed how I saw a lot of things. But they were in Colorado and I lived in LA. And my teacher in LA was like, well, I've taught you everything I know, because now you're studying more, like you're studying with people who I study with. So why don't you go where I take? And so she took me to the
mm.
place where one of Joseph Pilates' clients had a studio,
Nice.
and I
Nice.
got to train with him. And I still am learning. And even though he passed away this summer, I'm still learning from him, because he had a patience and a calmness and a curiosity that I think take is a muscle to learn.
Mhm.
And it's not just for me to learn, but it's for me to teach my clients as well. And it's not about being perfect in the Pilates practice. People are like, oh, I need you to correct me as much as possible. I like to be corrected. I'm like, I'm not, I don't go get shamed somewhere else. Like, I'm going to observe your body. And our job together is to figure out what exercises do you need to do this one better. So
Correct.
if you like, if so, going back to posture, some people I might use the reformer. Some people I might use a spine corrector. Some people I might use a wall. Some people might need all of it. Right. So
Right.
it's really like, so it's really, I have to observe. I have to observe you move. I have to learn how you learn. And then you and I are going to collaborate together because you are the body and you actually will teach yourself better than I ever could, by better than any words I could do. And he taught me that. And I really think like, um, that makes this actually more fun and probably why I keep teaching because it's not boring. Like I every Tuesday and Thursday, I have a session online with a teacher and I have to work myself out. He doesn't tell me what to
Mm.
do. I have to create my own workout. And
Right.
then he will ask me to dig deeper. Do you think you could do this more? And then I'm like, do I? What do I think? And it's just really quite a fun conversation I get to have with a guide. And so that's why I keep learning because there's so much to learn. And also, as our bodies change, we learn more
Mm.
things, right? Like my body at 41 is very different than my body at 25 when I started this practice.
Right. Right. You talked about 3 tools just now. One, everybody in the world knows. You said wall.
Yeah.
The other two, people like, what on earth is a reformer? Is that somebody who used to be? So I love the fact because I know what they are, right? But anybody who's listening and who's never even done a Pilates class,
Mhm,
I'm going to recommend that you definitely do. But listen to the advice you gave,
mhm.
because if they've just learned it last weekend and now they're your teacher, you can also get hurt, right? So
Yeah.
looking
It
for someone
If you're
is
getting hurt in
important.
Pilates, it's a good sign that the teacher you are with doesn't understand how to teach your body or doesn't know what they're teaching. And
Correct.
I say this with so much love for my industry, but Pilates itself, the exercises taught to the body when they're ready for it, should not hurt you at all.
Mhm.
They're literally the spine shapes your body does. If they hurt you, you were not set up for success.
Right.
And I think it's because a lot of people want to do classes because they can afford classes. They don't want to dedicate themselves to some privates. And a lot of studios want to insist that people do privates where they're in classes. I do. I
Mhm.
insist before, not on my online stuff because that's a little different and we have lots of options, but I have thousands of free tutorials that you can learn from. But when I had a studio and you came in person, you had to do so many privates and then you can join the class. And that was because I wanted you to be independent and I wanted people who've been in class for several years to not be slowed down. So it
Mhm.
like, and I think that there's something sweet about that. But yeah, you got to be safe and you ask questions. Like if you want to do Pilates in person, you got ask them who trained you? How long
Mhm.
did you study?
Yeah.
No one asked me that.
Wow. Wow.
No
They
one
just
ever
came in
asked.
and trusted you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And lucky for them, they can. But like, ask people like, "Oh, like," and you might not know what the schools are called, whatever, just like write them down. But you can also ask things like, "How long was your training?" You should
Mhm.
be hearing things like, "Oh, it was over 450 hours or
Right.
600 hours." If you're not hearing hours, they don't say any hours, then they probably did workshops, which is fine, but they actually didn't have to practice what they learned in the workshop.
Mm, mm. And so many people don't do what they practice in the workshop.
Yeah.
For example, the client that I had this morning, she actually, one of her first questions was, "How long have you been training?"
Mhm.
And so when I went through the whole process, she's like, "Okay." And then she started telling me about her dad, right? And her dad, she called her dad before she came to see me. And he's like, "Good for you, go for it." But he also said, "Be careful," right? Because sometimes we don't know who's going to be your instructor. So definitely ask the questions. So go ahead and tell everybody, what on earth is a reformer?
Okay, so Joseph Plies created the mat work first, and so a lot of people devalue the mat. They think the mat is not hard enough. It's well, the hardest thing you can do is actually support your own body. So the mat is where it's at, and it's also the most accessible. But meaning you can just do it on the floor. You can do it at an airport, you can do it at a hotel. You don't have
Right.
to go to a studio. The reformer was built, I don't think it was his first piece of equipment that he built. I really do think that the Cadillac was the first piece of equipment, but essentially it is like a bed, like an elevated bed
Mhm.
that has springs attached to it. So when you press your legs to straight, the springs open up and the bed moves. And when you bend your knees, the bed closes. So think about squatting, but lying down, right? Like that would be one of the first exercises you would do on a reformer. It's called footwork. What's cool about a reformer, and here's the thing, a lot of people are like, oh, I do reformer Pilates. So I'm going to correct you. You do Pilates and it happens to be on a reformer,
Right.
because the reformer is not its own piece. The Pilates is a system, and we have all these different pieces. And I will say, if you only ever do with a reformer, you are not actually challenging yourself to see what you can do on your own, because a reformer is there to reform you. It has shoulder blocks to help you understand if your shoulders are even. It has a headrest to make sure your neck's in the right place. We can take the headrest down so it's flat, do overhead stuff. We put it up to help your abs actually get more connected when you're lying down. There's a foot bar, so we can actually tell if you're reaching with both legs evenly or if you're pushing off with one leg. You've got springs that really help challenge you and help you connect to your muscles. You have straps that help you do this. So you have all these different things that are like super supportive. Doesn't mean it's not hard. There are definitely some hard things. If you like something cool, you'll do a cartwheel off it someday. You can do a headstand on a reformer. It's amazing. But it's really there to help you feel the movement with the tension of the springs, so that when you go to the mat to do it, you can feel what that was like. You can actually call upon that. So that's what a reformer is. A little scary. I have on my YouTube channel, I have tons of free videos. One that talks about like reformers for at home, because a lot of people want to put them under their bed or in a closet. They want something that's affordable. I'm going to tell you right now, a good reformer is going to cost you over $4,000, period. Unless you're buying it used from somebody else. And even then, if it's under 2,000, I want you to do some research. I'd rather you ping me. Like I've had so many people ping me on YouTube. They're like, okay, there's this deal on this 89-inch reformer by this person. And I'm like, how tall are you? You don't need that. And also like, no one needs that. And you like, that seems really cheap. So either they don't know what they have or something's wrong with it. Like get on it, has it cut, like what's going on? So, but here's the other thing. They last forever. I have had my reformers for 7 years. That's like really young for a reformer, and they've needed no repair work, nothing. Just have to wipe them down, super clean. So I think like, but that's not the only thing. So if you're wanting to do Pilates at home, you want a really good mat, but then you can also grab a Wunda chair. And a Wunda chair is Wunda, means wonder in German. Just applies is from Germany. And the chair is the first piece of home gym equipment ever made. And you can do 30 minutes on this chair, 15 minutes on this chair, and really connect your body. You can do some crazy, amazing exercises for yourself and then get on with your day. I think we go, if a workout isn't real unless it's an hour. And that's not true. It can be 15 minutes and it can be really effective. So that's kind of, I went off a tangent. A spine corrector is this really cool piece of equipment that's not very expensive. It's about $700. And it actually helps you connect to your back body. It actually helps you build back extension and connect your arms to your body and your legs to your body. And it's super cool. So if you don't want to spend a ton of money, but you want to have some Pilates pieces at home, I would actually invest in that spine corrector.
Nice. When you started teaching, you started with mat.
Yeah.
Right.
I was obsessed when I started doing Pilates. I never knew that there was equipment. I didn't know about equipment for a year and a half. I just only knew the mat, and I was just getting better and better at
it. So you started with the hard stuff. I love it. When you started learning about the equipment, was it difficult for you to start to teach it to someone else? Because when you do it for yourself, it's a certain way you can do it. But when you do it for somebody else, you're outside of it, right?
Yeah. Yes and no. I'm an oldest child, so I grew up teaching my siblings a lot of things. And I was also a store manager. So you have to teach people a lot of things. You teach them, you observe them do it, you teach again. I think what was hard was actually the complication that sometimes, like, I think people can place things. Sometimes we make things a little precious. I don't mean just in Pilates, but we like overcomplicate things. For example, I was talking about the reformer and I said, you press out, you bend in, you're doing a squat lying down. And I was taught like, okay, they need to inhale and press their legs to straight, hold it out there without locking their knees, exhale and bend it in. That's a lot of words, right? So whenever I said it like that, people just look at me like, what do you want me to do? And I really was like going back to, I'm not a dancer. I'm not super into perfection. So I would just go, just straighten your legs and bend them. Okay, do it again, but this time, you know,
Breathe.
control it on the end. You're crashing. Like, what do you have to do to control it so it doesn't crash? Okay, now do it again and try to breathe with it. Right. So, like, you can help people. Like, we just have to get people moving and then we can correct them and get them more connected as we go.
Well,
Yeah.
you and I teach very much the same. Because if, how would you feel if somebody kept correcting you and correcting and correcting and correcting and correcting?
Yeah.
So Michael Duffy just subscribed to your channel. Look at that.
I know. Michael, thanks so much. You'll
Yeah.
love it. If you love the mat work, there's tons of free classes on there. And then there's there's so many tutorials. So, yeah.
And so one of the things is if we overcomplicate something for somebody, we're going to turn them off, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a few people in this world that are really into self-deprecation and really into like, that kind of thing. And you'll find those people. But I really think that I know how habits are made. So BJ Fogg wrote the book Tiny Habits. I got to study with him, and habits are truly made on how you emotionally feel after a thing. And even if you don't like the habits you have, some of the habits you have, the habits you call a bad habit, I promise you there is something emotionally positive that it's giving you. If you check your phone when more than you wish, you're getting relief or something. You're getting some sort of dopamine hit, like you are. So you might not like that you do it, but something it's benefiting your brain. And so if I want people to do Pilates, not just with me, but like on their own, I have to make sure that they feel like they were good at it and that it's possible and that they can do it without me and really empower them to have the agency to do it. Right. So Joseph Pilates never ever said the word don't. And I had many teachers who were fine with saying, don't do that, or don't use your shoulder, don't do this. And my teacher, Jay, never said don't. He said, tell people what to do. You don't want them to use their shoulders? What should they use? Tell them specifically what to do. Straighten your legs, bend them. I don't want you to crash the reformer. Okay, what do they need to do to not crash? Do they need to use their stomach more? Do they need to push with their, when you bend your knees, push with your legs more? Do you feel that? Okay, what did it feel like? Try that again and try to find that feeling. So you have to tell people what to do. And I think we assume people know what to do and they don't. And when we tell people don't do something, well, that only works if they know what to do next. If they don't know what to do next, then they're just gonna, okay, then what do you want me to do? So it's really, I think it's really important as teachers of any regimen, like how can we be specific, encouraging, and also tell them what we want versus what we don't want.
I got to tell you, Leslie, you are so passionate about what you do, and it's so invigorating for me to listen to you bring that passion forward, and it's beautiful. I can tell that you care, and the fact that you said people's posture needs to be fixed more than the fact that they're on social media all the time. And that tells me that you truly care for mankind. And when I say mankind, I really mean womankind as well.
Yeah.
For humans, right? Uh, what, and I can see why it was important for you not just to teach a class, but to teach instructors, because the more people you affect, because if you teach one instructor and they have 10 students, now you taught 10 instructors, now you're teaching 100 people at once. What made you say that's where I want to head to?
Um, People asked me to do it, and I am really into experimenting. So I said, okay, I'll try it and let's see how it goes. If I don't like it, I won't do it again.
Right.
And that is kind of how it started. Like people invited me into spaces. I liked it. Things I didn't like, I made changes to, and I just kept going. And the reason I started a mentorship, I really never wanted to. And when the first year I did it, I said, this is the only one. I may never do this again. So, and I'm not saying it to threaten you or to sell something to you. Like I'm being completely honest. I don't know if I like it.
Right.
And I loved it. I had a lot of fun, but I'm not for everybody,
Right.
And I think like that's really important. If I'm not for you, there is someone out there who is. And instead of going, ugh, Pilates is terrible. No, maybe you just didn't like it with me, or maybe you'll like it with me later.
Right.
You just don't like it. So I think it's just really important for me to hold true to who I am and what I know to be true about Pilates and what I'm so grateful that I was taught what Joe Supply's intentions are. And that might be different than what the popularity of Pilates is right now. But I also know that like the way I teach it is the way that I know the most amount of people can then have access to it and have a practice that's their own and
Mm,
not outsourced to like what I've created to entertain them today.
love it, love it. When you wake up every morning, I'm going to put you on the spot. What are your first thoughts?
Okay. I wake up every morning and my first thoughts are like, okay, I'm going to get into this cold plunge. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get into this cold plunge. I'm going to make myself get in this cold plunge. And then after my cold plunge, I'm like, oh, it's going to be a great day. Yeah.
So you talk yourself into. I love cold showers. So every morning I do one.
Yeah.
It's funny because sometimes if I take a double shower or triple shower, some days I will still do cold. And people are like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know. It's so invigorating, right? But for you, you're like, oh, I got to do it. I'm going to walk myself into it, right?
I think it's important for people to hear that. Like, I am a morning person, but I don't wake up excited for the morning. I wake up going, okay, what day is today? Where am I at? What am I doing? And then once I do my cold plunge, I'm like, okay, this is going to be a great day. But like,
Love
I
it.
think, because I think some people think that they have to wake up and it has to be like rainbows and butterflies. And it's not always, but you can put things in place that help you
Mm.
see that there's a possibility in your day.
My gosh, I got to tell you, Leslie, you and I can probably talk for hours. And I want to thank you for today, but I also want to give you a chance to kind of tell everybody you got 30 to 60 seconds. Tell everybody how to connect with you because I have been having your website running across the bottom, right?
Yeah, that's a free challenge.
opc.me
Mhm,
challenge, right?
mhm.
What
So it's a
what's the challenge about?
So it's a free challenge. You can do it on the mat. If you have access to a reformer, there's another one there. It's 4 weeks long. The first week is 10 minutes long. You take the class as many times as you can. 10 minutes. Like who doesn't have 10 minutes? That's not even a percent of your day. And then the second week adds on. So it's the same exercise. If we add more to it, it goes to 20 minutes. Then the third week is 30 minutes. The fourth week is 40 minutes. And here's the beautiful part. You never have to finish it. Because I
Mm,
actually believe finishing is optional. I think we have to take pressure off of ourselves to always complete everything we start because sometimes we'll never get started. So I actually want you to compare yourself to yourself. So that's what that challenge is. You can find me on Instagram at my name at leslie.logan, Lesley. And you can find my YouTube channel. It's just online. It's just youtube.com/at online Pilates classes. Like I said, tons of free tutorials. There are free beginner classes on there. Then there's advanced. And the goal, I would love for you to be a member at OPC. That's onlinepilatesclasses.com. We actually give feedback on form. We hold you accountable. We have an amazing community. I love that. But
mm,
first, it's okay if you want to just consume the free stuff and make sure you like it. Ask me questions on YouTube. I answer them on Sundays. If you're a member, I answer them in the community every day.
love it. Wow. Incredible stuff. And everybody, if you're listening, even on the replay, go check it out. Leslie is is uh, is someone who cares, and I think that's the kind of instructor you want to have in your life. Someone who cares about your well being and not just yours, but the world.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. You've been teaching all over, right? If you
Yeah.
will. Um, what's the craziest? And I know we ran. This is going over, but I just have one question.
Okay.
What's the craziest place you've ever taught?
I mean, I think some places will be crazy to others, but I've been to Poland multiple times to teach.
Mm.
Probably a little weird for some, and then South Korea. I've taught there.
Mm.
I have a house in Cambodia. That's probably the weirdest place.
That's cool though.
I teach Pilates there at my house on a retreat. So you can go on a retreat with me if you want.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Love it. Leslie, we're going to say goodbye to everybody. Do me a favor, hang on for a minute. And
All right.
everybody, have yourself an exceptional day. Thank you for joining us. If you watch it on the replay, hit a hashtag replay and let us know you were here. Thank you, everybody.